Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this talk. I'm going to get going now. Firstly, just a quick notification that I am recording. The reason I'm recording is because I'm going to share this presentation through tomorrow's newsletter so that anybody who can't attend can still catch up with it. But please be mindful that if you ask any questions, the question will appear in the recording. If you would like to ask a question and you're not comfortable with that, feel free to email me. I probably won't get back to you tonight, but I'll try and get back to you tomorrow. And if you do ask a question in the chat, which you're welcome to do, please keep these questions relevant to what we're talking about. So supporting year 13 students. If you have any other questions or questions that are really specific to your child, then feel free just to email me. So I'll get straight on with it. We're just going to cover these things. So welcome and purpose of the event, student wellbeing, study tips, procrastination, that thing that we know we all suffer from, and use of mobile phones. And also a quick notice, students know this, you should be aware, but if in case anybody isn't, students will have mock examinations during the week beginning the 8th of December. There will not be timetabled lessons that week. So students can either come into school full-time and use the study facilities, or they can study from home apart from their examinations. So the reason that we're doing this talk is because a few parents have been in touch with me over the last weeks and months and basically said that they don't know how to support their child. It's a very difficult time, and I'm very aware that when students are in year 13, there's a bit of a difficult trade-off because they look like adults, they sound like adults, they almost are adults, but then they're really not adults, and they're so children as well. And that's a very, very difficult balance. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. We're going to look at wellbeing strategies, and we're going to look at revision strategies to adopt at home. Full disclosure, I have a child, but not a teenage child, so I can't directly empathise with what you're going through. But I've been head of sixth form for 6 years now, and I've spoken to many, many parents who are dealing with this slightly difficult transition. It's a beautiful, glorious transition as children become adults, but it's also a difficult transition. And so I do have quite a lot of experience of supporting children through this particular phase. So I guess the first thing I'm trying to say is I empathise. I have seen many, many parents go through this. And if you ever want to just phone and have a chat about it, then my door's always open. So a quick notice. If you believe your child is entitled to access arrangements and they don't get them, please can you contact us as soon as possible. If anyone doesn't know what that means, access arrangements are exam board granted accommodations for students who have maybe additional needs, learning needs, some specific educational need, meaning that they benefit from these access arrangements to give them a fair shot at doing examinations. Those could involve extra time, rest break, being in a smaller venues, having a reader or a scribe, or working on a laptop. Now, you should know if your child is entitled to any of those access arrangements, and if they are, and you feel they're not getting them, please let me know ASAP. So, in terms of wellbeing, I find most children in year 13 are either pretty laid back or will run themselves into the ground. And I have found over the last 6 years that there aren't that many in the middle. Now, there are some, but it's quite rare. Generally, by this point, students are either really going for it or they're kind of not. And I say this to students several times. Year 13 have heard this a number of times in assembly, so feel free to reinforce it at home. At this stage of year 13, they have still got time. The problem with that is those of them who don't really get going until things feel urgent, it's not kicked in yet. But at this stage, they've actually got time to really make a difference to their grades. And at the end of the day, the best thing we can do to help them with their well-being is ensure that their study is done well enough at this stage and early enough that they don't need to panic at the end. Because the reality is, we have all the well-being systems and all the support systems in place, but if they have an exam in 2 days' time and they've not done any studying, there is not anything that we can do to help them in terms of well-being, really. We'll give them a cup of tea, we'll pat them on the back, we'll look after them, But ultimately, in terms of exams and studying, the best thing they can do for their well-being, and the best thing you can do, is to push them to get that studying done now. I fully appreciate that managing that dynamic between you and them is tricky, but actually them getting that work done now, I promise you, is the best thing we can do for their well-being. So academic well-being tools and how to manage working with slightly older children. Firstly, revision schedules with enough flexibility. It is absolutely true that children of this age will have a number of priorities in their life. That might be that they want to do a part-time job, they want to save up money so they can go traveling with their friends in the summer. It might be that they like to go out. It might be that they do a particular sport or a hobby or something like that. It might be that they just like time lying on their bed, listening to music, whatever it might be. But the reality is, if we don't build a revision schedule that has sufficient flexibility, then they're going to struggle. And so I would sit down and have a conversation with your child about what is realistic in terms of revision schedules. If your child starts their revision now, both for the mocks are not for another 5 calendar weeks, and for the summer exams, 8 months' time. If they start now, they have got time to build a revision schedule that's got genuine flexibility. And so sitting down and saying, right, what are your non-negotiables? You want to go to this sports practice, you want to go to this birthday party, and you need half an hour a day just doing absolutely nothing. Work that out, map that in first, and then they're much more likely to stick to an agreed revision schedule. Secondly, and this comes with a huge caveat, ensure students have a quiet space to work. I'm very realistic about the fact that some households can't do that. For example, if there's a baby living there or something like that. And if that is the case, encourage them to use Coventry or Warwick University libraries. We have connections with both. We can provide them with the access, but please check on them. Every year, I speak to parents who say to me, they spend all of their time sat in their bedroom. I know they're studying, they're working really hard, and then they don't do well. And we start unpicking it. And it's like, well, did you know they were working, or were they on their phone? Were they actually sat down studying? Did you check on them? And so please do give them that space to study, but periodically go in, actually have a look at what they're doing, hold them accountable, make them show you what they've done, make them demonstrate that they're not on their phone all the time. Planning realistic breaks is important, but also planning when to do work. This particularly is the case if your child is more on the anxious side. We've all been there with having, let's say we've got a week's holiday. I reckon everyone on this chat will know exactly what I mean. And you've got a job to do, but you don't plan when you're going to do it. It's so easy to get to the end of the holiday, have not done the job, and spend every single day worrying about it, meaning you haven't had a rest either. So half term is coming up. Next week is half term. And I recommend very strongly that every family sits down and maps out when your child is going to study. Block that time out, make it absolutely sacred, and then the rest of the time is for fun. And your child will be able to relax and rest much more in their off time if they've planned carefully what they're going to do in their on time, so that that's mapped out for them. It will also help manage expectations if they know they want to see their friends. If you've agreed with them when they can do that, it won't feel so much like a barrier. I think it goes without saying, healthy food and keeping hydrated. And the next one is really difficult. So with students this age, they're starting to want to go out, they're starting to want to go to parties. It really does make sense, and it really does make a difference for them to have a sensible bedtime to stick to. If they are going to bed at 10 p.m. one night and 2 a.m. the following night, their circadian rhythm just doesn't settle enough for them to get properly rested. Now, obviously, they're all going to have the odd night when they're doing something later, but if generally they can have a sensible bedtime, it makes a difference. The next one, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but every year there are students who basically live a lot of party life, not too much partying or alcohol, especially in the week. We find it very effective to plan little rewards. I've seen lots of children this works for. If you do this, pick a takeaway, whatever it might be. And again, I appreciate not everyone can afford that, but it doesn't have to be expensive. Oh, well, I'll get you a chocolate bar or whatever it might be. And celebrating small successes. The problem with A-levels is they're hard and they're huge, and it's the same with BTECs. And so celebrating the small successes as we go through is really, really important. Now, that was a bit of a whistle-stop tour in terms of some tips to help with well-being. But if your child is really struggling and you're worried, then first and foremost, contact their mentor. We've got Laura Mitchell, sixth form counsellor. She has a drop-in session every week, as well as scheduled appointments. Mrs. Hosking is our wellbeing officer, and then we've got myself, Mr. Shepherd, and Mrs. Gossel. If you are very worried about your child's mental health, please take them to the GP. On the board, I'm not going to read these out, but I'll just leave them there. If you are genuinely, seriously worried about your child's mental health or well-being, please have these printed out and left around the house. We ask students all to photograph them, every single student, so it's not a taboo. But the more places they have access to these things, the better. So I'm just going to leave those on the screen for a few seconds. Okay. So a few study tips. People often say to me, we want to help our child, we're going into their room, we're checking their studying, but we don't really know what they should be doing. So here we go. Firstly, I recommend that you sit down with your child and you understand what exams they're going to be doing and what content they'll be doing in each exam. Every subject looks slightly different. For example, I'm a maths teacher. We have 2 exams. One is pure, one is applied. The content for those 2 exams is completely different. And so it's important that students understand what their exams are going to look like. We ask them to use textbooks at A level. Almost every subject has a textbook. There are reference copies in the school library, and it is absolutely worth students using textbooks for their revision. We recommend, and I'll talk about this a bit more later, that students revise the tricky topics first. Excuse me. So if you're helping your child build a study timetable for over the half-term holiday, the first thing that is worth doing is sitting down with them and saying, right then, what topics are tricky? What are your least favourite topics? Let's schedule those in first. There is a good amount of educational psychology research that evidences that students learn better if they do short sessions of different subjects. So rather than spending 6 hours on one subject, spending 45 minutes on one subject, 15-minute break, 45 minutes on another subject, 15-minute break, and keeping going between different subjects. It's called interleaving. And as I said, there is a good amount of evidence. It's a fairly recent trend within education that this sort of jumping between excuse me, subjects helps embed things in long-term memory. And also use the specification. So your child will have access to the specification for all of their courses. And if they don't have it to hand, then it'll be accessible on the exam board website. I recommend printing them off a copy of the specification and literally getting them to go through and tick off the things they're happy with, or highlighting in different colours the things that they understand and they don't understand, so that you know where you are in terms of a starting point for their revision. Examiners' reports are on the website for all the exam boards. Every year, when an exam series is finished, the examiners who set and then marked the exams write a report about what they wanted to see, what was done well, and what was done badly. It is very beneficial for students to go through those exam reports, read them, and have a look at whether they understood how to answer those questions well. So I recommend that students have a go at last year's exam. Then they have a look at the exam report, see what they did well, see what they did badly, and use that to make improvements. I recommend they make spider diagrams of key points from examiners' reports. If they look at several examiners' reports, they can see what the patterns are, what examiners are looking for every year, and that will help them formulate their answers. I talk about exam technique like you would for a marathon. Students might sit down and do a full pass paper. They don't need to do that. That can feel overwhelming. If a full pass paper is too much, one question every day is really powerful. I recommend students practice their proofreading. Now, that could be proofreading for an essay. It could also be proofreading for a maths or a science question. In something like a maths or a science question, it is really common for students to make a careless error at the start of their question and then make a silly mistake, 2 + 2 = 5. And then, even though they did the rest of the question perfectly, because that first answer is wrong, they lose all of the answer marks for the whole question. In order to help them with that for maths and science, look at the mark scheme one line at a time. So check their first line. If they've got that wrong, change it, redo the question. Keep going one line at a time to train them to proofread properly. If they're doing essays, excuse me, again, when they finish them, don't let them just finish the question and leave it. Go to the examiner's report, look at how they've done, redraft it, do it again. It's important they practice checking they've got the salient points in so that when they get to the exam, they know how to look back over and see if the question includes everything they think it should. And by using those exam reports regularly, they will get used to the sort of thing that should be included. I recommend strongly that students repeat questions they've already completed and they try and improve them, because the process of looking at what they had done and doing it better is a powerful tool in terms of improving their grade. Not only does it give them practice of the question, but it allows them the mindfulness of reviewing their own answer and understanding the topic well enough to see what they needed to do better. And again, the evidence for this is overwhelming. We retain information best by teaching it. So I recommend to the students that they teach their parents, carers, peers, friends, siblings, dolls, dog, cat, hamster, about the bits of the course they find most challenging. If you've got hamsters, then they're quite good at listening to these things. So I recommend genuinely spending time as a family discussing parts of the course that the child finds difficult. They can learn it, and then they can, if you can sit around the dinner table and you can bear to hear them teach you about something that they've found tricky, they revise it themselves, then they teach it to you. That is literally the best way of them retaining it. It might mean your dinner table conversation is going to get a little bit different for the next few months, but I promise you it will do them a lot of good. If they do a study session and then you make them a lovely dinner and you say, right, sit down and teach me about that, then that will make a big difference. And again, we're training as if it was a marathon. Practice questions in exam conditions or timed conditions. I recommend you facilitate this in your home. You take away their phone, you take away any devices, you time them and say, right, we're going to do this question. You've got 20 minutes, and actually get them to sit and practice writing exam questions. I know that feels like you might be spoon feeding them, but they really do benefit from having that structure. Right, procrastination. Procrastination is something, it's the biggest enemy in terms of studying, but it's also inevitable. Procrastination is definitely going to happen. And therefore, rather than having a lofty goal of your child not procrastinating, which I think is unrealistic, I recommend that you accept it and you plan for it. Now, the way to do that is to plan in procrastination breaks. So set small goals. In 20 minutes, support your child to set small goals. To be clear, I'm not saying that you have to do all this. This is very much on them, but support them, right? 20 minutes, off you go. And then you can have 5 minutes procrastinating. Whatever they do to procrastinate, they'll be very productive on their phone. They might tidy their desk, whatever it is that works for them. Right, 40 minutes, off you go. Short but regular breaks, but time their breaks or support them to time their breaks. The problem with this is a student will do the first 20 minutes beautifully, then they'll have their 5-minute break, get their phone, and then 2 hours later they've still only done 20 minutes. And so procrastination breaks are fine as long as they finish. When I was at university, I don't know if anyone here remembers MSN Messenger, but me and my friends had an agreement where we would do 30 minutes work and then we'd chat on MSN for 5 minutes. Then we'd do 30 minutes work, chat on MSN for 5 minutes, even though we all lived in the same flat. Don't ask me why. And that worked really well. That sort of thing can be very helpful to encourage children, particularly those who find studying tricky, to get some stuff done. Remove distractions as much as possible. And it is very helpful for a child to do a large task first and then treat themselves to crossing some small ones off their list. If your child's got a list of things they want to achieve in a study session, that big thing will be hanging over them. Now, I talk about this as eating your frog. This is a phrase I use. I don't know where I heard it from, but it basically means do the worst task first because you'll feel so much better afterwards. We all have something we don't like. For me, it's the dishwasher. I don't know why. There's something about unloading the dishwasher I don't like. Once I've unloaded the dishwasher, cleaning the rest of my kitchen is really, really easy for me. And your child will academically have the equivalent of the dishwasher. So, as I was mentioning earlier, in half term, it's really helpful for them to think of something that they really struggle with and prioritize getting to grips with that. And so, if you can encourage your child to identify maybe one topic area per subject that they really don't like, they find incredibly difficult, and prioritize that this half term, that is really beneficial. We often find that students do lots of studying, focusing on the parts of the course they find easy, because that's comfortable to do. That makes them happy. They like it. But by eating their frog, revising the thing they find really hard, you will find that they will start to feel better and more confident, and that revising the other things will come more easily. So the last thing I really want to talk about is mobile phones. Now, if there is one thing that you take from this, it is that this is the hill to die on. The evidence is overwhelming. Mobile phones, and particularly social media, is so damaging for concentration. Now, put to one side the fact that students are seeing dangerous content, there's lots of messaging that's often very unhealthy. Put all that to one side. Simply, the impact on their studying is damaging, and the evidence is absolutely overwhelming. If your child is studying, obviously they're nearly adults, they need consent, but turn them off, take them away, lock them up, whatever it is you want to do. Agree an amount of time with them that you're going to take that phone and do it. If they need access to a device for their studying, turn off the Wi-Fi, block their social media on your internet, whatever it is that you want to do. Have a separate device that doesn't connect to the internet, something like that. If they need a device for their studying, there are ways around it. But those devices that access social media, meaning that your child is sitting doing their work and every few seconds ping, 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 the evidence is overwhelming that it just ruins the quality of their study. There have been countless studies about the fact that children who don't have social media, don't have mobile phones while they're studying, just do better. And so I really strongly recommend that you have this conversation and that you set some really firm boundaries in your household. Also, about music, if they listen to music on their phone, does this help them? And that's a question to ask. Some children it does, but lots of children, they like listening to music, but actually it's just another distraction. The noise it creates in their head doesn't help them. So if they're listening to music on their phone, please make sure you're absolutely convinced that it actually helps them. Now, on the screen now, there are some websites that allow you to block certain things. So, for example, if your child needs their phone for a safety reason, or they need their phone because they need resources on it, you can block Snapchat or Instagram or whatever it is that they use, YouTube, that they use irresponsibly, or that gives them notifications or that distracts them. And these websites, you can use apps on their phone that block these social media apps for certain times. So you could agree with them that between 5 and 7, no social media. Put one of these apps on to shut down the social media between those times, and then at 7 o'clock, the social media will start again. So that's just again, do take a photo. That's just some ideas to hopefully help. And so that's really a whistle-stop tour of some ideas that I hope are helpful. If you've got any questions that are relevant to what we've talked about, please type them in the chat. I'll answer any short questions now. Anything bigger, please contact the email address you can see on the screen. Right, I'm not seeing any questions. So I'll say good night there. Thank you so much for attending. I will hang on the meeting just for another minute. So if anyone's got anything they want to ask, you'd be welcome to. But thank you. Good night.
Hey, Mrs. Green. This is Jyoti, Tanisha's mum. I just wondered whether you would have time for a quick chat now, but I could hear your little baby in the background, bless, so I don't know whether it's probably not a good time to speak now. I've emailed you. If you could just come back to me with an identified time where we could